line, 2nd and 13. Miller waits for the shotgun snap, gets it, stands in the pocket, throws it, intercepted! It's picked off. Khalil Mack is going to return it for a touchdown.
He's going to score.
Khalil Mack dives for the pylon. Touchdown!
Yeah.
How about that from the All-American? Khalil Mack intercepts the screen pass and returns it for a Buffalo touchdown.
That was the play from the season opener against the Ohio State Buckeyes that left college football fans everywhere scrambling to Google to figure out who Khalil Mack was. We know now. Gary Davenport here, IDP senior staff writer at Fantasy Sharks, continuing my look back at the 2014 NFL Draft with the IDP Draft Review. This time up, we're going to go with the big dogs, the guys that are the foundation of your IDP squad, the rock, the running backs, the defense. And that, of course, would be the linebackers. This year, thank goodness, because the defensive linemen, we got hammered. The IDP gods were a little kinder to the linebackers. Some guys didn't get the ideal spot. Some guys got more favorable spots than we expected. But there were enough guys that got spread around that there's a nice list of guys for IDP owners to choose from that should have some good fantasy value both in 2014 and moving forward. As we take a look at the top 10 rookie linebackers for 2014, the list kicks off with Lamon Barrow of the Denver Broncos. This is a guy that John Elway's been talking up as a 3-down middle linebacker for the team. I don't know that that's going to happen right away. I wouldn't be surprised if Barrow gets some early down work fairly early in his rookie season, but I think he'll be limited to a 2-down role at least in 2014. Chris Borland from Wisconsin went to the San Francisco 49ers. Great player. Couldn't ask for better tutors from an NFL perspective than Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis. Borland will have some IDP value early on. But once Bowman returns from his ACL injury, Borland's stuck behind Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman. I mean, what are you going to do? It may be a little while before we see Borland get significant snaps. And we got Kyle Van Noy, who went to Detroit. Both he and Anthony Barr, who ranked 6th on the list, sort of similar players. They're going to play a strong side linebacker, defensive end hybrid role. They'll play strong side linebacker in the base defense and then kick to defensive end in some passing situations. There's going to be some variance in those guys. They're going to have more value in your big play formats. Look at them. A best case scenario for those players would be to turn into a Justin Houston type. Probably, an LB2 plus if you're in a league that awards highly for sacks. More balanced and tackle heavy scoring systems. He's going to be more of a third linebacker and a high variance one at that. Sandwiched between them is Telvin Smith, outside linebacker from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Fast as lightning. Not a lot of guys he's got to climb ahead of to see significant playing time. It's not a crowded depth chart, but he's a little guy. 218 pounds, not quite 220. Decent size for a safety, not so much for a linebacker. He's going to have to add some weight. We'll need to see how that weight affects his quickness. If he can add one without subtracting the other, this is a guy that could crack the lineup for the Jaguars fairly quickly. After that, we've got Christian Kirksey of the Cleveland Browns. Whereas we've been complaining a lot about talented players who didn't land necessarily in a favorable fantasy situation, with Kirksey it's flip-flop. I think the Browns reached. I don't know that he was a third-round talent in my eyes, more of a day 3 guy. But they wanted him. This is a guy who could slot next to Carlos Dansby at weak inside linebacker from day 1. Craig Robertson is not a world beater. Would not be a surprise to see Kirksey start from day 1, play 3 downs. Problem is, it's the talent. I don't know that we'll ever see him become more than a third linebacker. So if you're looking for a guy who can help you this year and you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of upside, then Kirksey's a guy you might want to target. If you're a all upside guy who's willing to wait, he's probably not going to be a guy who's going to appeal to you. After that, we get to Jadeveon Clowney, who would have been the #1 overall IDP this season had he landed on a 4-3 team and played defensive end. He didn't. He's going to be a linebacker in Houston for the foreseeable future. I think his ceiling is probably an Aldon Smith type. He's going to give you lowish tackle numbers. If he can reach the point that Aldon Smith had before his recent trials and tribulations, where he was approaching 60 tackles a year and posting those sack numbers, we can get that out of Clowney, that would be wonderful. I'm thinking more early in Smith's career, 40 tackles, 12, 14 sacks, that sort of thing. He's going to have a lot more appeal in big play formats. I think he can still be a high variance, maybe third linebacker in a balanced scoring system. But like I say, he's a guy He's a pass rusher. They don't want him to play the run or drop back in coverage. They want him to kill the quarterback. That's it. That's why they drafted him. That brings us to our top 3 guys for this year. These are the guys that I think could really make an impact in not just in 2014 but beyond. These 3 guys are on a level all by themselves, and then there's a pretty good drop off before we start talking about even Clowney, just from an IDP standpoint. It's just the reality of the situation. The first one of those guys is C.J. Mosley, who was the first-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens. Was a little surprising given how much they've been talking up Arthur Brown as a potential future starter. Already had a solid player there in Darryl Smith. So it was a little surprising to hear them go that direction. But it's a move that makes sense for him. I mean, Mosley is a great sideline-to-sideline linebacker. He's got 3-down capability. The Ravens have talked him up as a 3-down linebacker. They said that they view him as an every-down linebacker from day one. The only problem I see there is that Arthur Brown, by the end of his rookie season last year, had emerged as a pretty good nickel defender and was playing in sub-packages for the Ravens. So I don't know that Baltimore is going to be in a hurry to rush Mosley into that 3-down role with Brown waiting in the wings and Darryl Smith. So I think it might be 2015 before we see Mosley get that 3-down role. If he gets it right out of the gate, I'm probably underrating him. Maybe flip-flop him and Shazier. You could make a case Mosley jumps all the way to the top. But that question is enough for me for now to have him 3rd. Next up, I got Ryan Shazier, who was another bit of a questionable pick. I mean, I'm not doubting the Pittsburgh Steelers and Dick LeBeau's ability to coordinate a defense or anything like that. It's just a little surprising in that not many people had Shazier pegged as a 3-4 inside linebacker type. Yet Pittsburgh took him, and apparently the plan is they're going to start him from day one at weak inside linebacker. They're going to kick Lawrence Timmons over to the other inside linebacker spot, and that's the plan. Shazier certainly has the quickness you want in today's linebackers first coverage. I mean, he runs like a deer. 4.38, I think, at Ohio State's pro day, and he tweaked his hamstring running under 4.4. There is some question, though, given that he only weighs 237 pounds, how he'll hold up playing inside linebacker. Thing is, they were saying very similar things a few years ago about a kid out of Texas Christian named Darrell Washington, who went on to be pretty good for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, it's not to say Ryan Shazier is going to become the next Darrell Washington and turn into a top 5 IDP. It's possible. That's his ceiling. That's best case scenario. This year, I would look at him as an LB3 plus. If a couple things break the right way, you could easily see him crawling that top 25, solid LB2 territory. I think if you're in tackle-heavy formats, he's the top rookie IDP linebacker. If you're a guy who likes steady tackle production, he's the guy that's going to be consistent for you. And that brings us to my personal number 1 fantasy rookie linebacker for 2014. That is the guy that I kicked off this little video with, Khalil Mack, who went to the Oakland Raiders at 5th overall. It actually kind of runs contrary to my own philosophy because I'm a big tackles guy. I like the consistency. I like to know that I'm going to get those points from a guy every week. But I just can't overlook Mack's talent. He's a guy, he has it all. He's got size, speed, strength, great work ethic, motor, goes all out every play, instincts. I mean, it's all there. He can play inside, he can play outside, he can cover, stuff the run, rush the passer. Over 100 tackles, over 10 sacks last year. I mean, I could just go on and on and on about how good a football player Khalil Mack really is. He's going to play that strong side linebacker, defensive end hybrid role I mentioned earlier with Barr and Van Noy. The reason I have Mack above Shazier and Mosley is that I feel we'll see Khalil Mack reach his IDP ceiling, which I look at as a Von Miller type. You know, say 60 tackles, 10, 12 sacks, which can be IDP LB1 numbers in a lot of scoring systems. I think Mack has the best chance of the top 3 linebackers I mentioned of hitting his ceiling quickly, in fairly short order, in the first 2 years in the league. I think Khalil Mack's going to be a really, really good football player. Good enough that if Houston had drafted him 1st overall, I wouldn't have batted an eye.